However strange it may sound, there are many hopes, indeed all hopes today, are pinned on the American President Donald Trump. He unexpectedly finds himself on this geopolitical chessboard as the sole figure who currently possesses the ability to effectively lobby for, decisively push through, and ultimately exert enough pressure to achieve a profoundly crucial matter concerning Ukraine's EU accession. You are aware that this is being blocked quite clearly by one particular country, and there are specific reasons behind that. That country is Hungary, led by Viktor Orban. So, a really interesting piece of news just emerged right before Donald Trump's scheduled meeting with the Hungarian Prime Minister, a matter of hours prior to their planned discussion. The Atlantic Council reports that Donald Trump plans to pressure Viktor Orban to completely remove his opposition to Ukraine's EU accession, thereby resolving the matter. Trump will insist that the absolute block be lifted and the issue concluded. He endeavors to unblock Ukraine's EU accession by means of his meeting with Orban. Thus, why exactly is Trump starting to participate in this whole political game? And why this entire Orban story is now perhaps an episode that might finally be coming to an end with an outcome that is definitely not positive for Budapest, but rather a quite positive one for Kyiv. Why? It's not merely that Orban's position is unstable. You are aware that next spring elections are scheduled to take place in Hungary, and currently, based on sociological surveys conducted within Hungary, Orban's party is not securing the highly coveted victory it seeks for itself. For now, it's just math, sociology, and various calculations. However, the situation is extremely concerning, and Viktor Orban finds himself in a position where he urgently needs to secure the full support of the Americans. In fact, this particular meeting had originally been planned in a completely different way. Viktor Orban had been putting out feelers to Washington, specifically seeking concessions for Hungary. This was primarily focused on Washington's sanctions policy, aiming to avoid purchasing energy resources, including natural gas and crude oil, from the Russian Federation. However, Hungary was supposed to be an exception. This aligns perfectly with Viktor Orban's logic. Why? Because he possesses a strong argument, my friends. Hungary is a tiny nation, as he himself proclaimed, and lacks any access to the sea. Consequently, it is unable to secure its own supplies by sea, nor can it construct LNG terminals to import these necessary energy products. Particularly energy-related ones. Therefore, Hungary must be permitted to trade with the Russian Federation, subsequently bolstering its budget. So how much more can Hungary supposedly afford to incinerate? Trump really dislikes this. Why? Because if everyone is implementing a sanctions policy, then everyone must adhere to it. If Brussels gives its approval, meaning we're all engaged, then Budapest, as a member of the European Union, must similarly participate and be actively involved in the game. There absolutely can be no exceptions, and Donald Trump communicated this message to Viktor Orban a week prior to their meeting. When journalists questioned him about whether Viktor Orban had inquired about purchasing energy resources from the Russian Federation, Trump affirmed that Orban indeed asked, and the response was unequivocally negative. Same conditions for all. Moreover, the Atlantic Council now states, furthermore, Viktor Orban is absolutely obliged to remove his blockage on Ukraine's integration into the European Union. Why? Trump desires, if not to win, then at least not to conclude this war, which is now the 8th or 9th. I have honestly lost track. However, for example, to achieve another significant interim diplomatic victory right now, one that would be truly substantial for Washington, for Kyiv, and for Brussels. Ukraine is a democratic country, and don't forget that Ukraine is in the United States' sphere of interest. Regardless of what anyone might claim about trading it for rare earth metals, that's entirely rubbish. This is the sphere of influence of the United States of America. Some might even suggest it's the 52nd or perhaps the 51st, 52nd state of the USA, right here in Kyiv. They might claim we'll soon be dealing in dollars and living that way and all sorts of other things. Well, there's no big deal about it. It's our foremost partner at present. And it goes without saying that anyone who permits themselves to act improperly toward their American partners is certainly no friend in Washington. This holds true for any president, be it Biden, Trump, or whoever comes next. Isn't that right? They aren't friends. You don't treat friends like that. And now for the most interesting part. As a businessman, what is Trump supposed to discuss with Orban? What exactly does he need to discuss? What kind of exchange? Orban needs to be offered something substantial. And today, quite surprisingly, Kyiv is making a very interesting move, which to all appearances seems rather unexpected. And just a few hours prior to this pivotal meeting, where former President Trump will undoubtedly exert considerable pressure on Orban, Taras Kachka, who serves as our deputy prime minister, has made an announcement. He states that a comprehensive set of proposals has been dispatched to Budapest, encompassing a significant draft legislative bill intended for Ukraine, which specifically addresses the issue of the Hungarian minority. You are aware that Budapest has already set out quite some time ago 11 distinct points focusing on critical areas such as education, language, and the protection of Transcarpathian Hungarians and so on and so forth. There are many issues there. So Taras Kachka says that Kyiv is making a 100% concession on 5 of those points today, on 5 of them. The remaining 6 items are specific points that can essentially be settled by simply making a phone call. The whole mess with these specific points is not new at all. It has actually been dragging on for about 11 years now, ever since 2014, which is when Ukraine initially adopted amendments to its legislation concerning education, isn't that right? And that's when their relationship began to deteriorate, but at that point, the question of Ukraine's EU accession was not yet on the agenda. Currently, the European Commission has issued a report acknowledging the significant strides Ukraine has made. Thus, a clear path forward is now crucial for Ukraine. Such a trajectory can uplift the nation's morale, invigorate the military's motivation, and ultimately generate substantial political dividends for Volodymyr Zelensky's administration. That's why there's so much tension. I want to tell you, there's a military track and a political track. And on the political track, it's also essential to demonstrate your capabilities. And clearly, Ukraine is prepared for quite a lot at this moment, isn't that so? This holds particularly true for resolving the matter with Orban, who once again stands at the cusp of an upcoming election. So then, what could Budapest realistically gain? What could it receive in return for granting its assent for making this crucial concession concerning Ukraine's full accession to the European Union? This would, of course, be direct support for Viktor Orban coming directly from Donald Trump. Donald Trump needs to really step up and back Viktor Orban, offering him unwavering political support and publicly declaring that Hungary stands as a super democracy of global significance, truly paramount on the world stage. And it is Viktor Orban who is truly making Hungary great. If such an agreement is reached, then consequently it follows that we will also have a decision regarding Ukraine's EU accession. Orban is actively seeking and desiring political support and backing from Donald Trump, specifically political support. Here's another interesting aspect. This information is from Bloomberg, and it's also being reported by the Hungarian publication Magyar Nemzet, which states that in the event of after concluding successful negotiations with Donald Trump, Viktor Orban may expedite the arrangement of a summit bringing together Putin and Donald Trump to be hosted in Budapest. Incidentally, Orban references some rather vague issues. Perhaps he concocted them himself. I'm not yet sure. It hasn't been clarified, 1 or 2 matters, he claims. He asserts that there is at least 1 or perhaps 2 pivotal issues between Moscow and Washington that must be resolved for the proposed meeting in Budapest to actually take place. And these are precisely the sorts of issues that Viktor Orban could be instrumental in resolving swiftly. Can you actually imagine such a profound level of influence? It's quite obvious that Orban in some ways aligns with Putin as a friend, but the real question is, does Orban truly possess sufficient leverage or power to genuinely facilitate this critical meeting and bring it to fruition? And is Putin even truly aware that he only has 1 or perhaps just 2 issues on the table to address? You know that old joke? My dear friend, I have 2 questions for you, but ultimately only 1 truly remains relevant. Forgive me, but I can't be sharing those sorts of jokes here. I'm sure you're quite acquainted with that particular bit of Ukrainian folklore, aren't you? So here then is the main development and crux of the whole matter. We might have to put up with Orban for 1 more term after this. And in exchange, we would be granted open doors, a clear green light, and complete absolute consensus within the European Union regarding Ukraine's accession to the EU. Are you prepared to put up with Viktor Orban for yet another period? How much time does he have left in power after these elections? Quite interesting.